The rain-slicked streets of Asheville, North Carolina, gleamed under the sodium glow of streetlights. But for Elias Kane, the world was a blur of betrayal. His heart thundered as he stood outside the bar, clutching a crumpled note from his husband. "Marcus." That read, "Meet me at the Rusty Anchor. We need to talk." Elias had sensed the distance growing between them, but nothing prepared him for the storm about to break. Inside, the bar hummed with low chatter and the clink of glasses. Elias scanned the dim room, his hazel eyes catching on Marcus's broad shoulders at a corner booth. The man he'd loved for 5 years, the one who'd promised forever under a harvest moon, sat with a stranger in a tailored suit. Elias's stomach churned as he approached, the air thick with something unspoken. Marcus's face, usually warm and open, was a mask of guilt. "Elias." "Sit," Marcus said, his voice low, almost mechanical. The stranger, a man with sharp cheekbones and a cold smile, extended a hand. "Vincent Caldwell." He introduced himself, his grip firm, possessive. Elias's instincts screamed to run, but love anchored him to the seat. Vincent leaned forward, his eyes glinting like a predator's. "Marcus has told me about you. You're remarkable." The words felt like a transaction, not a compliment. Elias glanced at Marcus, searching for an explanation, but his husband's gaze was fixed on the table, fingers twitching around a whiskey glass. "What's going on?" Elias's voice cracked, betraying the fear curling in his chest. Marcus exhaled, a shuddering breath. "I'm in debt." "Elias." "Deep. The business, it's collapsing." His voice broke, but he pressed on. Vincent offered a way out. He's a CEO, runs Caldwell Enterprises. He's interested in you. Elias's world tilted. Interested. The word tasted like ash. He looked between the two men, the pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity. "You're selling me." His voice rose, drawing glances from nearby tables. "Not selling," Marcus said quickly, but his eyes wouldn't meet Elias's. "It's a contract. A year with Vincent. He'll clear my debts, and you'll live better than we ever could." Vincent's smile widened, a shark circling prey. "You'll be well cared for, Elias. My home in Raleigh is yours. You'll want for nothing." Elias's hands shook as he stood, the chair scraping against the floor. "You think I'm property, Marcus? We took vows." His voice was a raw wound, and the bar seemed to hold its breath. Marcus reached for him, but Elias jerked away. "Don't touch me." "Elias, please," Marcus whispered, but Vincent cut in, smooth as silk. "You'll come around. You're too special to waste in this small life." His tone dripped with condescension, and Elias felt the weight of his own worthlessness, a feeling Marcus had once banished. He fled the bar, the rain soaking him as he stumbled into the night. His mind raced Marcus. His alpha, his protector, had traded him like a pawn. But beneath the betrayal, a spark of defiance flickered. Elias wasn't just a husband. He was a man with dreams, a painter whose canvases captured the soul of the Blue Ridge Mountains. He wouldn't let this break him. By dawn, Elias had packed a bag, leaving behind the home he'd built with Marcus. He drove north, the road stretching toward an uncertain future. In his rearview mirror, Asheville shrank, but the pain clung to him like damp clothes. He stopped at a gas station, the clerk's radio playing a song about freedom, and it stirred something in him. He wasn't just running. He was reclaiming himself. In Raleigh, Vincent's mansion loomed like a fortress of glass and steel. Elias arrived under duress, the contract signed in a haze of anger and necessity. Vincent's world was opulent but cold marble floors, chandeliers, and a staff that moved like ghosts. Elias was given a suite, but it felt like a gilded cage. Vincent's attention was suffocating, his compliments laced with ownership. "You remind me of someone," he'd say, his gaze lingering too long. Elias learned the truth in fragments. Vincent's former partner, Julian, had left him years ago, and Elias was a stand-in, a replacement for a love Vincent couldn't reclaim. The CEO's touch was calculated, his affection a performance. Elias played along, but every smile was a lie, every moment a step toward escape. He found solace in a small studio Vincent allowed him to use. There, Elias painted wild, vibrant works that screamed of freedom and heartbreak. One canvas, a swirl of blues and reds, depicted two figures under a stormy sky, hands reaching but never touching. It was him and Marcus, or perhaps him and the man he wished Marcus could be. One evening, as Elias worked, a gardener named Theo wandered into the studio. Theo was lean, with warm brown eyes and hands rough from soil. He paused at the canvas, his voice soft. "That's beautiful. It feels alive." Elias froze, unused to kindness without strings. "It's just a painting," he said, but Theo's smile disarmed him. "It's more than that. It's you." Theo's words were simple, but they cracked something open in Elias. They talked until midnight. Theo sharing stories of his childhood in Georgia, Elias confessing the weight of his betrayal. For the first time in months, Elias felt seen, not as a possession, but as a person. Their meetings became a ritual, stolen moments in the studio. Laughter over shared coffee, brushes of hands that lingered. Theo was cautious, aware of Vincent's power, but his presence was a lifeline. Elias began to dream again, not just of escape, but of a life where love wasn't a transaction. One night, Theo brought Elias a small clay pot with a single marigold. "For hope," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Elias's heart ached with a feeling he hadn't known since Marcus's early days, something pure, untainted by greed. But Vincent's shadow loomed. Elias noticed the CEO's growing suspicion, the way his eyes tracked him. One evening, Vincent cornered him in the studio. "You're mine, Elias," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Don't forget the contract." Elias's defiance flared. "I'm not Julian. I'm not yours." Vincent's face darkened, and Elias knew time was running out. He confided in Theo, who promised to help him escape. They planned in whispers, mapping out a route to a safe house in Virginia. But as the day approached, Elias felt a strange exhaustion, a nausea that lingered. A visit to a discreet clinic confirmed his fear. He was pregnant. The child was Marcus's, a secret he'd kept even from himself. The revelation changed everything. Elias wasn't just running for himself now. He was running for his child. Theo's resolve only strengthened. "We'll do this together," he said, his hand steady on Elias's shoulder. In that moment, Elias saw a future worth fighting for, a family born not of obligation, but of choice. As they prepared to flee, Vincent's grip tightened. He installed cameras, locked doors. Elias's paintings became his rebellion, each stroke a cry for freedom. Theo smuggled supplies, forging a path through Vincent's fortress. The night of their escape loomed, a storm brewing both outside and within. Elias stood in the studio, his latest painting unfinished, a sunrise over mountains, a symbol of hope. He touched his stomach, feeling the faint stir of life. "We're getting out," he whispered, to his child, to himself. Theo appeared at the door, his face set with determination. "Ready?" he asked. Elias nodded, heart pounding. The rain began to fall, a mirror to the night he'd fled Asheville. But this time, he wasn't alone. The rain was relentless, hammering the roof of Theo's old pickup as they sped through the night. Raleigh's lights fading in the rear view. Elias clutched the marigold pot, its fragile petals trembling with every bump. Theo's hands were steady on the wheel, but his jaw was tight, eyes flicking to the mirrors for signs of pursuit. "We'll make it," Theo said, his voice a lifeline in the dark. Elias wanted to believe him, but Vincent's reach felt endless. The CEO's wealth could buy loyalty, silence, even blood. Elias's hand rested on his stomach. The secret of his pregnancy, a quiet strength. He wasn't just escaping for himself anymore. They drove toward Virginia. The safe house a distant promise. Theo had a friend there. A woman named Lila who ran a shelter for those escaping impossible lives. "She's helped people like us before," Theo had said, and Elias clung to that hope. But the road was long, and doubt gnawed at him. What if Vincent found them? What if Marcus, consumed by guilt or greed, betrayed him again? Elias's thoughts drifted to Marcus, to the man he'd loved in a small Asheville apartment, where they danced to old vinyl records and dreamed of a gallery for Elias's art. That Marcus felt like a ghost now, replaced by someone who'd traded love for survival. Elias's chest ached, not just for the betrayal, but for the love he'd lost. Theo's voice broke through. "You're quiet. You okay?" His concern was gentle, unguarded, and it stirred something in Elias, something he hadn't dared feel since Marcus. "Just thinking," Elias said, his voice soft. "About how I got here. About what's next." Theo's hand left the wheel, resting briefly on Elias's. "Whatever's next. You're not alone." The touch was fleeting, but it warmed Elias's skin, a promise of something new. They stopped at a diner in the Blue Ridge foothills, the neon sign buzzing in the rain. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and grease. And the waitress, a woman with tired eyes, didn't ask questions. Elias and Theo sat in a corner booth, their knees brushing under the table, over pancakes and lukewarm coffee. They talked not of escape, but of dreams. Theo wanted to open a nursery, to grow things that brought joy. Elias spoke of painting again, of capturing the world's beauty without fear. "You'll get there," Theo said, his eyes bright with belief. "Your art, it's like you're painting the truth." Elias's throat tightened. No one had ever seen his work that way, not even Marcus. As they left the diner, a black SUV idled across the street. Elias's heart lurched. Vincent's men. Theo noticed too, his hand guiding Elias to the truck. "Keep moving," he whispered. They drove off, the SUV trailing at a distance. Theo took back roads, weaving through forests and small towns. But the SUV stayed close. Panic clawed at Elias, but Theo's calm kept him grounded. "We'll lose them," Theo said, turning onto a dirt road. The truck rattled, branches scraping the sides. But the SUV fell back, its lights fading. Elias exhaled, his hand on the marigold pot, its soil spilling slightly from the jolt. They reached the safe house at dawn, a modest cabin tucked in Virginia's Shenandoah Valley. Lila, a woman with gray-streaked hair and a no-nonsense demeanor, welcomed them. "You're safe here," she said, her voice firm but kind. The cabin was warm, filled with mismatched furniture and the smell of cedar. Elias felt a flicker of peace, but the weight of his pregnancy pressed on him. He hadn't told Theo yet, afraid it might change things. That night, as Theo slept on a cot nearby, Elias sat by a window, sketching the mountains. The pencil moved with a freedom he hadn't felt in months, each line a step toward himself. But the peace was short-lived. A phone call from Lila's contact in Raleigh warned that Vincent was closing in, his resources vast and relentless. Elias woke Theo, his voice trembling. He's coming. We can't stay. Theo's eyes hardened. Not with fear, but with resolve. Then we keep moving. Together. He took Elias's hand. And in that grip, Elias felt a strength he'd forgotten he had. They left at midnight, Lila's warnings echoing in their ears. She gave them a new route, to a community in Pennsylvania where Elias could start over. The road was treacherous, winding through mountains. But Theo's presence was a steady anchor. Elias finally told him about the pregnancy, the words spilling out in a rush. Theo's face softened, not with pity, but with awe. You're bringing life into this, he said. That's incredible. He paused, then added, I'm here. For both of you. Elias's eyes burned with tears. For the first time, he saw a future not defined by betrayal. But Vincent's shadow loomed larger. A late-night gas station stop revealed a missing person flyer with Elias's face, claiming he was unstable and needed to be returned to Vincent. The CEO's lies were spreading, painting Elias as a fugitive. Theo tore the flyer down, his voice fierce. They don't get to define you. Elias nodded, but fear lingered. Vincent wasn't just chasing him. He was rewriting his story. As they crossed into Pennsylvania, the truck's engine sputtered, forcing them to stop at a small mechanic's shop. The owner, a gruff man named Sam, offered to fix it overnight. With no choice, Elias and Theo checked into a nearby motel, the kind with flickering lights and thin walls. In the quiet of their room, Theo sat beside Elias, their shoulders touching. I'm scared, Elias admitted, his voice barely audible. Not just of Vincent. Of everything. Theo turned, his eyes steady. You're stronger than you know. I see it in your paintings, in the way you keep going. He hesitated, then leaned closer, their foreheads almost touching. I see you, Elias. The air between them crackled. A fragile, beautiful thing. Elias leaned in, their lips meeting in a kiss that felt like coming home. It was soft, then urgent, a promise forged in defiance of the world hunting them. For a moment, the fear melted away, replaced by a warmth Elias hadn't known he could still feel. But dawn brought reality crashing back. Sam called the truck was ready, but he'd heard rumors of men asking about a man matching Elias's description. Vincent was close. Elias and Theo packed quickly, their hands brushing as they moved. A silent vow to face whatever came next together. The Pennsylvania countryside blurred past, a patchwork of fields and forests under a gray sky. Elias's hand rested on the marigold pot, now cracked but still holding its fragile flower. Theo drove with quiet focus, but the tension in the truck was palpable. Vincent's reach was tightening, his men scouring the region, their lies about Elias spreading like wildfire. They reached Lancaster, a town of quiet streets and Amish farms, where Theo's cousin, Rachel, offered shelter. Her home was a weathered farmhouse, its porch creaking under the weight of history. Rachel, a woman with sharp eyes and a warm laugh, welcomed them with open arms. Your family now? She told Elias, her words a balm to his frayed nerves. But safety was fleeting. Elias's pregnancy was progressing, the nausea now a constant companion. He confided in Rachel, who arranged a visit with a local midwife, Sarah, who worked discreetly for those in hiding. Sarah's examination was gentle, her voice steady. You're healthy, and so is the baby, she said. But stress isn't good for either of you. Elias nodded, his hand on his stomach. The child was a tether to Marcus, a reminder of love turned sour, but also a spark of hope. He wanted this baby to know freedom, not fear. Theo, ever present, sat with him during the visit, his quiet strength a contrast to Marcus's broken promises. Rachel's farmhouse became a temporary haven. Elias painted in the attic, his canvases now bold with defiance fiery reds and golds. Figures breaking free from chains. Theo helped with chores, his laughter filling the house as he and Rachel reminisced about their childhood. Elias watched them, a pang of longing for the family he'd lost. But Theo's glances, soft and knowing, reminded him he was building something new. One evening, as they sat on the porch, Theo handed Elias a sketchbook. "For when you're ready to tell your story," he said. Elias's fingers traced the leather cover, his heart swelling. Theo saw him not as a victim, but as a creator, a fighter. Their connection deepened, each moment a rebellion against Vincent's control. They shared stories under starlight, their hands entwined, their kisses stolen in the quiet of the barn. Theo's touch was gentle, respectful, a stark contrast to Vincent's possessiveness. Elias felt himself healing, piece by piece, the wounds of betrayal scabbing over with hope. But Vincent's shadow grew darker. A local shopkeeper mentioned strangers asking about a runaway artist. Rachel's face tightened. "You need to move soon," she said. She connected them with a network of activists who helped people like Elias, those trapped by power and betrayal. The plan was to head to Philadelphia, where a community center offered legal aid and protection. The night before their departure, Elias woke to a nightmare Vincent's voice, cold and commanding, echoing in his mind. He stumbled to the attic, painting until dawn, pouring his fear into a canvas of storm clouds and breaking chains. Theo found him there, paint smudged on his cheeks. "You don't have to carry this alone," Theo said, pulling Elias into his arms. The embrace was a sanctuary, and Elias let himself cry. The tears a release of months of pain. They left at first light, Rachel's tearful goodbye lingering in Elias's heart. The road to Philadelphia was fraught with risk. At a gas station, Elias spotted a familiar black SUV, its driver watching from afar. Theo's hand tightened on his. "We're not stopping," he said, and they drove on, the SUV trailing like a predator. In Philadelphia, the community center was a beacon of hope, run by a woman named Amara. It buzzed with people rebuilding their lives. Amara, with her no-nonsense attitude and fierce compassion, arranged for Elias to meet a lawyer, Javier, who specialized in breaking exploitative contracts. Javier's office was cluttered with books and hope, and he listened to Elias's story with quiet intensity. "Your contract with Vincent is predatory," Javier said. "We can fight it, but it'll take time." Elias nodded, his resolve hardening. He wasn't just fighting for himself now, but for his child, for Theo, for the life they could build. Theo found work at a local nursery, his love for plants a quiet rebellion against Vincent's sterile world. Elias painted, his art catching the eye of a gallery owner, Maya, who offered him a small show. For the first time, Elias saw a path forward, a life where his talent, not his body, defined him. But Vincent's men were relentless. One night, as Elias and Theo walked home from the center, a car screeched to a stop. Two men stepped out, their faces hard. Elias Kane. One said, "Mr. Caldwell wants you back." Theo stepped in front, his voice steady. "He's not going anywhere." The men advanced, but Amara's security team, alerted by a bystander, intervened. The confrontation ended in shouts and retreating taillights. But Elias's heart pounded. Vincent wouldn't stop. That night, in their small apartment, Elias and Theo held each other, the fear mingling with their growing love. "I won't let him take you," Theo whispered, his voice fierce. Elias kissed him, the act of defiance of everything trying to tear them apart. The next day, Javier uncovered a lead. Vincent's contract was tied to illegal dealings, a web of corruption that could bring him down. But pursuing it meant exposing Elias, risking everything. Elias looked at Theo, at the marigold now replanted in a new pot, and made his choice. "I'm done running," he said. "Let's fight." The Philadelphia skyline glittered beyond the community center's windows. But Elias's world was narrowing to the fight ahead. Javier's office was a war room now, papers strewn across the desk, each one a piece of Vincent's empire waiting to be dismantled. Elias's paintings lined the walls, a testament to his resilience, each stroke a rebellion against the man who tried to own him. Theo sat beside him, his hand a steady anchor. "We're in this together," he said, and Elias believed him. The pregnancy, now visible, was a quiet strength, a reminder of the life he was fighting for. But Vincent's shadow loomed, his men circling closer, their threats escalating. A brick through the center's window, a note promising consequences. Vincent was desperate. Javier's investigation uncovered Vincent's ties to a network of illegal loans and coerced contracts. Marcus's debt just one thread in a larger web. "If we expose this," Javier said, "Vincent loses everything. But it's dangerous. He'll come for you." Elias's resolve didn't waver. "I'm not his property. I never was." Theo squeezed his hand, pride in his eyes. They built a case, gathering testimonies from others Vincent had trapped. Amara's network connected them with survivors, their stories mirroring Elias' Slove twisted into chains, freedom stolen by greed. The gallery show became Elias's battle cry. Maya's Gallery, a small space in Old City, buzzed with anticipation. Elias's paintings told his story: betrayal, captivity, and the fierce hope of rebirth. The centerpiece was a massive canvas, a man breaking free from a gilded cage, a sunrise bursting behind him. The crowd, a mix of locals and activists, stood in awe. Maya whispered to Elias, "This is more than art. It's a movement." Theo stood by him, his presence a quiet strength. As the night ended, a stranger approached, a man with Marcus's eyes, but none of his warmth. It was Marcus, older, worn, his face etched with regret. "Elias," he said, voice breaking, "I'm sorry." Elias's heart twisted, but he stood tall. "You sold me. Marcus. You broke us." Marcus reached out, but Theo stepped between them, protective, unwavering. "I was wrong," Marcus said. "I thought I was saving us, but I lost you." He handed Elias a folder. "Evidence. Against Vincent. It's the least I can do." Elias took it, his hand steady. Inside were documents, proof of Vincent's crimes, enough to bury him. Marcus's redemption was small, but it was a start. Elias didn't forgive him, but he nodded, a silent acknowledgement of the man he'd once loved. The case broke open days later. Javier filed charges, and the media swarmed, Vincent's empire crumbling under scrutiny. His men stopped their pursuit, too busy dodging subpoenas. Elias and Theo watched the news from their apartment, the weight of fear lifting with every headline. Vincent's trial was swift, his wealth no match for the truth. He was convicted, his contracts voided, his victims freed. Elias testified, his voice steady, his paintings projected behind him, a visual testament to his survival. The courtroom was silent as he spoke of love, betrayal, and the power of reclaiming one's story. Months later, Elias stood in a small garden behind their new home in Lancaster, the marigold thriving in the sun. His son, born healthy and named Luca, slept in a carrier against his chest. Theo tended to new plants, his hands gentle in the soil. The gallery show had launched Elias's career, His art now sought after, his story inspiring others. Theo joined him, wiping dirt from his hands. "Look at us," he said, his smile warm. "We made it." Elias leaned into him, Luca stirring softly. "We did more than that," he said. "We built something real." Their kiss was a promise, not just of love, but of a life forged in defiance of those who'd tried to break them. The sun set over the fields, painting the sky in hues of Elias's art. He was no longer the man sold by his husband or used by a CEO. He was Elias Kane, artist, father, partner, a man who'd fled, pregnant and powerful, and found his way home.